this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the Heart of Storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week we speak with Scottish storyteller Jennifer Ramsay from Story Art about her work in the healing space. Now based in northern Spain, Jennifer does a lot of work in person and online and has a number of programs that she does working with others to help them work through stories, primarily fairy tales, and working with fairy tales to bring about some level of transformation or healing. We also dive into a little conversation about death, which was fascinating, and English language learners and foreign language learning. It's a great little conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Here's Jennifer. Welcome to this week's podcast. This week we're speaking with Jennifer Ramsay, who is in the north of Spain, but you will notice has a Scottish accent. Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
I would love to hear about your storytelling journey.
Well, I've been thinking about when did my journey actually start? And I actually think it started in 1989 when I was traveling around the world and I was in Australia. And I was actually teaching English to mostly Chinese students who were on a student visa and had to be there. And we're sort of obviously quite bored at times, but on a Friday afternoon, it was story time. And they would just like that, everything just would totally change. They'd get off their chairs, sit in cushions on the floor. And I thought, are these really the same people who were there other days? So I think probably that was like the first moment I discovered the power of storytelling. And because I was traveling around the world and I was really interested in, different stories and myths and legends from different countries, I got really into visiting like caves in Australia with Aboriginal rock art and reading the stories. And it's when I got back to Europe, something had awakened in me and I started like painting myths and legends and stories. And I actually had some exhibitions and I was asking people to tell the stories. And then I thought, why don't I start telling the stories? I thought, well, I live in Spain now and my Spanish isn't that good. I thought, well, I'll tell the stories in English. So I contacted lots of just like normal schools, primary schools, secondary schools. And there was a real interest in learning the students, like learning English at the time. So basically it was an overnight success. That was
Wow.
just over 20 years ago.
Wow. And so do you remember that first visit you went into the schools and things? Do you remember how it all went?
Yeah, I think it was in Spain there are official language schools. So I still remember them because I really did sort of base it at the very beginning on my travels around the world. So, we'd get to a particular country and then I would tell a story and then I'd go to the next part of my journey and tell another story. So it started off there and I think it's one of my favorite publics at the official language schools. It's for adults and they're just really keen to learn English. And instead of grammar and all this, someone comes in and tells them a story and they can understand the story because obviously I grade it. I'm not going to tell a really use really sophisticated language with language students, and they're just so grateful. So I think that's definitely and I still do remember the faces of some people. And I remember one in particular, it was in a place in Spain where the people aren't really known for being that sociable. And when I walked in, they said, listen, the students won't come if you're going to ask someone to volunteer. I said, okay, well, I won't ask for volunteers. But at the end of it, people came up and they said I had to pinch myself just to know that I wasn't in Scotland, because these were stories from Scotland that day. And others were saying, like, I have got a really basic level, but I was just totally lost in the rhythm and in this sort of like magic. Because I do like putting, my Celtic throws up, and I really do sort of like getting into the energy of the countries where we're sharing. Mm.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So, what is it, do you think, with English language learners what is it about story that helps them to understand or helps them to enjoy the process of learning English?
Well, I think it's putting it in a really clear context. They can relax and perhaps just, walk in the steps of the different characters, but without having to like, do the work. They can just sort of like, I mean, I also make it really visual as well. I use a lot of non-verbal language. So I just think it's also like perhaps connecting with that moment when you were younger as well, a child, and people told you stories. So I don't really know. I just know that it works. Obviously, I try to make it as, I put a lot of rhythm in it. And I'll maybe even try and get a little tiny song in so people can join in. So it's just this kind of, we're all together, kind of like community feeling. It's not just
Mm,
me learning English.
And you're not assessing them in that moment either. It's an
Exactly.
immersion in the language, isn't it? A bit like listening to music in another language. Yeah, so it's an immersion of. So tell me more about this art that you're doing.
Well, the thing is, the storytelling took over, so I had to give it up. I couldn't keep, I'm a mother as well. I couldn't keep going with everything. But for quite a few years, I would still have my art exhibitions. And normally, perhaps a cultural centre would invite me to come along. And for a couple of weeks, they would invite maybe like schools, groups of 50 students to come along. And they would sort of like walk around the exhibition looking for some clues. And then from the clues, that would lead to the stories. And then the stories would be talking about like the natural world. What are the messages from different, more than human beings? And, this, especially at this moment in time we're living, how could they help us to be more part of the web of life? So it really was really magical. And I was quite sad to give that part up. But just putting up an exhibition, I mean, it's a lot of work, physically you have to get it there, decide where you're putting things. And I even started making all these totem poles, connected with different stories. And then I was in a library, and at one point there was a group of kids leaving, and someone just like pushed one of the other kids, as you do, and a couple of art pieces of artwork got broken, and I just thought, oh, I think that's just time to.
Mm.
I'll just concentrate on my storytelling.
Mhm. So I'm quite interested in the process of art and story and creating a sort of pathway for people to travel to find the clues. What sort of process did you go through to do that?
Oh, it was a really, really simple process. It was things like, how many tortoises can you find in the artworks?
Yeah.
Things like really, really simple, because I had a big painting that, about the myth of Turtle Island. So that was like a big, big painting. And then there was a story from Nigeria about why why stones live forever. It's about death. So there was a few tortoises and they had babies, and then there was a totem pole about a tortoise. And then the piece of wisdom, which I really need, is it's just like, just slow down. Just look at the details, and you could well live for a long time.
Mm.
And I need to hear that piece of advice. I'm always running around and
So did you start
Like,
with with the art or the story, or did the story inspire the
eh,
art?
no, I think a story would just really inspire me, and I'd have to paint it. And at that point, I did have, two young boys. So sometimes I'd get up at 3 in the morning when they were sleeping to paint. I did really. I'm sure anyone who's ever been a mother knows that feeling. It's just your creativity. Well, I think actually, I don't know who said this once. They said like creativity is like, excuse the language, is like shit. It has to come out. And it does. It's just like when that creative urge is there, it just has to come out. You can't lie in bed just thinking, oh, you have to get up and
Have
up
to
and
do
do it.
something. Well, I've started having ideas just as I'm about to fall asleep, and so I send a message to myself on my phone with as much detail as I can go, and then send it off and go to sleep. So then I've got it in the morning, because otherwise I will forget that it existed, and I don't have my notepad right next to my bed, which I probably should. But that creative inspiration comes any time of day and night, and
Absolutely.
balancing a family is tricky.
Yeah, yeah. I just got something called a Kindle Scribe, which is like you can read your books and it's got a notebook.
Oh, great.
And it's quite good in your eyes. So if I wake up at 3 in the morning and I feel inspired, then I can just grab it and I can see it as I'm writing.
Yeah, what a great
Whereas
idea.
if it's a notebook, you have to like put on the light and that works for me.
Yeah,
Mm.
amazing. So what sort of work are you doing with story at the moment? Where do you work, and what sort of stories are you telling, and what's your practice?
So there was a before and after with COVID, because obviously all my in-person storytelling, disappeared. And I felt a real urge to create a story medicine workshop. And I had no idea about recording or platforms or anything. But with the help of my boys, who are now bigger, I got this platform together. And every week, what I would do is I would record a story and put it up there with exercises to do around the story. And it was to help people get through the lockdown. And I did it in English and I had one in Spanish. And everyone, like, they were so grateful. And then someone suggested to me, why didn't I do like story workshops online? And so there's a lovely platform called Online Events UK. And because I'm also a Gestalt therapist and I'm specialized in ecotherapy and psychodrama, I started doing these workshops, and all of a sudden they turned into fairy tale workshops. And so just like 2 hour long workshops just based on different fairy tales. And we really get into it in a really deep way, looking at the different symbolic language, how it resonates with the group. We do some artwork there as well. And a lot of the people who come are actually therapists or counselors. So then they know how to work with that story with their clients. So that's actually a really big part of my work now. And from there, actually, I started up a tiny little online school as well. And I do something called the fairy tale journey. And it's just taking people through fairy tales for a year and a day. We only have one a month, it's not every day. And I find that process is incredible. I could never, ever have believed that fairy tales had such like hidden code, so many hidden codes in them, just waiting to be revealed. Um, so I do still do in-person storytelling, but I also do, a lot of workshops online and this course. And another course I also offer is called Dancing with Death, and that's stories and creativity to talk about death. And I just think it's so important. And through a story, it's just so much easier to talk about death. Like I present a story and then we start talking about bits and pieces of the story. And then people are talking about death and their fears, or it's just so easy. It's just like opening a little gateway
Mhm.
into talking about sensitive subjects.
Yeah, for sure. So where you started to where you are now, I imagine that, because you were working with, children, and now that you've got this beautiful suite of things that you offer, what are some of the positives and negatives about the online spaces and running programs and things?
Well, I'm so grateful that I can really reach out to so many people with who are interested in this, because now I'm in the north of Spain. I haven't been here for long. So I don't have that many contacts up here who are particularly interested in sitting down and working on one story for 2 hours. So just to know there are people out there, and I'm just so grateful. I wouldn't do it all the time. I definitely I have to look after my screen time. But I also know when I was doing so much in-person work, I was really feeling burnt out because there's so much like traveling involved, and I just like the mix between the two, in
Mm.
person and doing these workshops. What are the negative parts? I actually can't really think of any negative parts as long as
That
you look
sounds
after.
good. I mean, I think that's probably the future for storytellers, though, is a bit of the online and a bit of in person. I think that finding that balance that works
Yeah,
for each of us is probably the best, the way we're going to go anyway. Because when we look at our audiences are international now. There's no
yeah.
borders in the online space, and so yeah, and we find our people in that, in the online space, find the people that are drawn to us. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of something I find really curious when when I was younger and living in Scotland, I always thought, well, it's impossible to say the grass was greener because Scotland is very green. But I always thought every other country seemed more like interesting and attractive and exotic. And, as soon as I was like 18, I started traveling, and I really did travel a lot when I was younger. And when I started telling stories, it was all these stories from different parts of the world. And now I just really love Scottish stories. It's just, and the part of the world I live in, the north of Spain, I mean, it really is quite Scottish looking. It's really green and it does rain a lot. And I'm sort of combining the Celtic mythology from the north of Spain with, Celtic mythology from Scotland. And so I feel as if I really have done a whole journey through the stories. And I also discovered that I really am a Scottish storyteller during COVID, because all of a sudden I was going to all these Zoom meetings in Scotland. I thought, now that's kind of how I tell stories. And I've just realized my way of telling is very Scottish. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? I think of
Yeah.
Scotland as a very, very wonderful place to dream about going to. It's just, yeah, it's the place that draws me the most. Actually, Scotland is. So tell me more about the fairy tales that you're working with. Are you working with most the popular ones, or do you try and find some more unusual ones? And how is it that you're working with them?
Okay. Well, I mean, I've worked with so many now that I just think it's a mixture. I'm actually doing one tomorrow that I'm so excited about, and it's called The Dream Makers, or the Makers of Dreams, and that's from Scotland. And I am absolutely traveling with that story. And the thing is, I actually discovered it like 20 years ago, and it's only now that all of a sudden it's inside my heart, and I'm really wanting to share it. Um, I just work with all types. Some of them are more difficult than others. I'm thinking of, for example, the juniper tree. I I always found that a story that would be difficult to share.
Mm.
And then I thought, no, 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 this is ridiculous. If I want to work with fairy tales, I have to work with them all. And I've only done it twice. And it's both experiences were really rich. So what I did, I felt a real need to connect with the juniper tree first. So I would, talk to juniper trees, hug juniper trees. I made a smudge stick out of juniper. I worked with juniper oil. And then when I started the workshop, I felt a real need. Let's connect with the tree and feel rooted. And, we're very much part of, the web of life. And then from there, tell the story. See that some people were like, I thought I was coming just to hear a nice fairy tale. And I mean, it really is quite a difficult one, if,
Mm.
in terms of, the stepmother
It's
killing
quite graphic. Yeah.
and then he serves it up for the father to eat his little boy. I mean, it's ow.
Mm.
But the last time I did it, it was actually it was a Sunday morning, and it was online, and it was in Portugal. There is it's called what's it called? The Fairy Tale and Storytelling uh,
Oh, Central
Therapy.
one? Yeah.
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 So normally I go there in person in March, and in November there's an online one. So there we were. It was Sunday morning. I thought, oh no, I can't believe I'm telling this story on a Sunday morning. And people got so into it. Like it was so amazing just how it touched everyone,
Mm.
but in a really, really different way. And I had what I normally do is I tell the story and then I just invite people to sort of replay it a little bit in their mind and let one scene call out to them. And then I ask them to draw the scene. And they draw the scene, and perhaps you'd like to give some of the symbols or some of the people, whoever's in it, some of the characters, a voice, give it a title, and then from there, share. And then also, because I'm a Gestalt therapist, someone will say something, I think, oh, is it possible that da, 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 and then, oh, that's happening in my life at the moment. It's just like it just comes up. It's just waiting for the moment to surface, and it's the fairy tale that brings it up. But I really do remember the juniper tree because I was so reluctant to tell it, and probably it was one of the tales that was just so rich for the participants. And it took it was actually 2 hours and a half, 2.5 hours or 3 hours. We didn't actually get onto any other exercises because I normally have lots of other things that connected with the story. And no, it just that everyone drawing a scene, it just brought so much up. That's what we did that day.
Mm. I mean, that story is something that it's not a common fairy tale. It's not something that people, well, they're definitely not telling their children that story.
No, no, no.
But it's got so much in it. It's a bit like Bluebeard as well. Even though they're quite graphic, they take you into deep, deep places, and that's really special.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking as well of the literary fairy tale, The Little Mermaid, and people coming along thinking it's going to be the Disney version. No, basically, I've just really fallen in love with fairy tales, and I've just realized that even if I feel resistance, they should be out there because there's just something waiting to be shared.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. I think they're really, really valuable. Do you have a favorite fairy tale? She's like asking a favorite child, but do you have a favorite?
I think it really just depends on the moment. At the moment, as I say, The Dream Makers is my favorite at this precise moment. For a long time, the Selkie stories were really important. And that's when I was living in the sort of mountains near Madrid. And in the summer, it just gets so dry. And I mean, when I lived in Scotland, I used to complain about the rain. But then I realized how important the rain is. And in the summer in Madrid, I just felt that my skin, my eyes, my lips, everything were drying up. And I just felt like the woman in the story that
Mm.
just so was like really felt this need to go back, this,
Mm.
real inside ancestral blood, needed to go back. And I actually feel quite happy in the north of Spain because it is much more sort of Scottish-like.
Mm. Yes. Sounds like the stories are traveling with you as well. So when you I'm interested in your process in preparing a story for these healing journey things. What's your process for preparing for that?
Um, well, it needs time, as in I'll just read it and then perhaps nothing will happen. And then walk with it, walk the dog. I take it into bed a lot as well.
Mm.
Like just before I'm sleeping, I'm thinking of it. And then things just happen. It's just like all the dots just seem to, I think, oh, I remember I did a meditation a couple of years ago or a visualization exercise. And the dream makers, well, that's talking about dreams, isn't it? So there's the dream world, and then also there's the dreams for whatever, the year to come or the new moon, or it's just, I really go into the story and perhaps I just take little details from the story and they take me off on a journey.
Mm.
So I never really know where it's going to go. When I tell the story, I do try and put it into the rhythm of nature. At the moment, for example, it's going to be a full moon soon. So that will be, I'm aware of that. I'm
Mm.
aware of the moment of the Celtic Wheel of the Year, is it? I take all that into consideration. So
Mm.
yeah, just every single detail. So normally okay, if it's a short story, I just tell the story. But if it's one of the long stories like from Grimm or the Grimm Brothers collection, I'll actually sort of like half read and half tell because
Mm.
I'm just worried that I miss out a really important detail because that could be the detail that someone needs. And it really is just I mean, it's all there in the story. It's just focusing on a part of the story and seeing where it takes us. I don't bring really anything from the outside apart from the moment in the Celtic Wheel of the Year or the moon.
It sounds like a beautiful practice. Sounds like it's very much um, in and around you in your processing. It's not not you're not busily writing it down or it's in and around your energetic space working with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it really, really is a process. I don't
Mm.
really need to write it down, but with I like giving like a PDF afterwards because people do use them with their clients.
Mm.
And that also helps me process, just actually getting it down and finding an image and yeah. So I don't, when I'm in a workshop, I don't show the PDF, but I like sending it out afterwards.
Mm.
And doing the typical looking through all the books I have, looking online as well, and just thinking, oh no, wouldn't that be an interesting place to?
Mm.
Yeah, I just love the process actually. Yeah, I
Mm.
can't
I
do too many.
do
I can't
too.
do too many. It has to really be one at a time.
Mm. Yeah. Sounds like you're doing a lot of deep work with the story in order to be able to then gift that to others, which is wonderful. So, this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. What do you think is at the heart of storytelling?
So what is? I just think it is the heart. Just,
The physical heart. That's a great answer.
I'm just, yeah. It's taken me actually to the story of Snow White, and one of the exercises I like doing is there's a part in Snow White when it says it's like the queen discovers that Snow White's more beautiful, and I think it's like envy and hatred started growing like weeds in her heart. And that would be an exercise I do. We're working on Snow White, draw a heart. What weeds are in your heart? And it's just one of these things that I would do. I just think stories are the heart. I can't really think of anything else to say. It's
No,
so
I no one's ever said that, and I mean, there was a deliberate reason why I chose that title for the podcast, and it's because I believe that stories do come from the heart. And it's about our heart to heart connection.
absolutely.
So that's what was a deliberate decision for me to do that. So where do you see storytelling going in the future for you and what you're doing?
Well, I am really quite concerned about what's happening to the environment, not only the environment, just to everything. Um, what humans are doing, and I definitely want to focus my energy on, as I say, I am like an ecotherapist as well, and I'm sort of studying forest bathing at the moment, like taking my stories more there in that direction.
Mm.
Although it's always been there since the very beginning. I just think more than ever, stories have to, it's just really help us to see what we're doing. And yeah, it's just like a little guide in the darkness. There's something I like to say when I do my workshops, and it's like stories have been with us since the very beginning of time. They've been with us through dark moments, through wars, through plagues, and they're here now to help us. And I think that's what I'd like to do. I think the big danger now is what are we doing to this beautiful world that we have inherited, this beautiful world we're a part of, and how can stories help us on that path? Yeah, that's where
Mhm.
I'd like to go.
So tell me more about your eco work.
Yeah, well, I sort of done some training in ecotherapy and forest bathing, and it's always been a bit difficult to practice that in the past, just because of where I was living, or perhaps I didn't find people were particularly interested. But I think now that's where I'd like to focus my energy, because it's just connecting it stories with the natural environment and just accompanying people to see that we are part of this web of life.
Mm.
And I think that's where stories can help. That's where I want to move my energy.
So would you take someone into the forest and tell stories within the spaces in there, or maybe do
That's
some
one
activities?
way of doing it.
Mm.
It can also be online.
Mm.
So be just perhaps doing a workshop, taking a break for, okay, in 20 minutes, perhaps just go outside. Is there a tree outside? If not, do you have perhaps a plant? And just actually connecting with a living being, or, it could be your pet as well. But I would love to take people into the forest and tell stories. Yeah, there's just lots of ways to do it.
Mm.
And that's where I'm sort of trying to find my way in. But online is definitely possible as well.
Mm. Oh, I love that what work you're doing. It just sounds like it's really rich and aligned with what the world needs right now. So,
I feel that too. And I
mm.
really feel it's in my heart. It's, now I don't have this thing about getting up at 3 in the morning to do these big paintings, but I'll wake up at 3 in the morning and I think, oh, now that story, like the dream makers, that's for me, I've realized that's all about connecting with nature, because there's the deers come, they help her. It's so it's help from the more than human world. And
Mm.
so yeah, it's just
Oh.
taking a story and yeah, and see how I can not adjust it, just focus on particular parts.
So I imagine that you've got some great experiences that you've had with people, both in person and online. Do you have any special moments that you'd like to share?
I think there's been so many. I can see it more in the course Dancing with Death, when people come along and perhaps they're a little bit like frightened, what we're going to talk about. And then I see it like a big ball of wool, and there's all these different strands. Let's talk about memories around death. Oh, well, that's easy to do. I talk about when my pet rabbit died. Well, it might be easy to do, not always. And then, well, then we go on to another thing. What's your image of death? And then just we go through this sort of process, what's after death, and at the end, just seeing how people are just much more relaxed as well. It's like, yeah, now I can talk about death. It's not this terrible, frightening thing. It's just, and quite a few people have said that they see me, even though I might be younger, like as a mother figure. And I think, oh, okay. So just sort of like guiding them through that taboo subject. Um, well, I think also in the journey, the fairy tale journey that lasts a whole year, I just think the most amazing things happen to people, things that I could never, ever imagine. I've just after Sleeping Beauty a few weeks ago, one of the participants got bitten by a spider on her thumb and she had to get rushed into hospital. And people kept saying, it just Sleeping Beauty comes to mind. And she's like, ah! And then I think she put the telly on at one point in the hospital. And again, it was talking about Sleeping Beauty. And it's just when all these, like the synchronicity, all these things it's just like magic. It's like, but how can, of the whole time in her life being bitten by a spider in Scotland? I don't know anybody else. I think it's what the spider must have been carrying, not the spider in itself. We don't have all these tarantulas or anything in Scotland. But it's just things happen to people, and it's just all, memories start to come back and it connects with another one. And in this process, it is a process. It's not just like, let's just put a fairy tale in here and one in there. It's like starts off and it connects most with your kind of like childhood memories. And then, it finishes with Beauty and the Beast, which is more, your shadow adult self.
Mm.
And it's just, it's the process of individuation, how you become a person through through fairy tales.
Mhm.
And I just find it amazing. I'll never, ever fail to be amazed at what happens when you go deep into fairy tales.
That's magical. So why do you think, just to go back to the death, why do you think it's such a taboo subject? And what is it about story that helps people to access it, the taboo nature of it?
Well, I think it's a pretty in recent times, it's become taboo. Like in the
Mm.
past, people would talk about death because death is part of life. Oh, actually, I could tell you a little story,
Go if you like.
tiny little story. And it's a story from Cameroon. And they say that two old ladies were walking along a country road. And it was hot and they were really dry. They were really thirsty. And they could see that just up above there was a well and there was a young man standing at the well. Oh, as they arrived, young man, could we have some water, please? Of course, of course. Um, well, he took a bowl of fresh water and he said, well, who's the oldest? Because they can drink first. And one said, excuse me, young man, I am life. I'm the oldest. Please let me drink first. And the other lady said, excuse me, I am death. I am the oldest. No, excuse me, life came first. No, death. Life came out of death. And they started arguing and arguing. And finally, that young man said, I think that you are both the same age. And he gave them the bowl to drink out of. And they both drank out of the bowl at the same time. Who knows what came first, life or death and life? But what I really don't understand is why do we talk so much about life and then death we don't? death is excluded from our society. And we know that exclusion just doesn't work. So it really is time just to bring death back in and let Lady Death have her space. And I think that's what stories do. They
Mm.
say that probably one of the first themes would be sitting around the fire and trying to make sense of death,
Mm.
perhaps trying to escape death and all these stories about death. But it really is, it just kind of puts a distance between the person and this. It is a difficult subject. I mean, we all have to die. But if we don't talk about it now, then what happens? It's when you're about to die, or you've got a serious illness, or someone near you is dying, and all of a sudden you have to discover what does death mean for you. So it's much, much easier to talk about death. I actually had a storyteller come along at one point to do the course, and he found it quite difficult to talk about death. And then he realized quite early on it's because when a family member had died, he hadn't really made peace with that.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, just talking about death through stories, he realized it and then was able to tell stories about death.
Mm.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh no, it completely does. And thank you for sharing that wonderful story from Cameroon. I really enjoyed it. So, do you have some advice for people who might want to do the sort of work that you're doing, um, either online or in person, around the work? Yeah, your work.
Um, well, I think you really have to believe in it. You really have to trust the process because there are moments I think, oh my goodness, do I really want to tell this story? And then let's just trust the process. It has been around for such a long time, and let's see what it brings up. Um, it does help if you do have some kind of training in. I mean, I feel very, very comfortable when people volunteer to share their experience, just having that therapeutic background. Although I'm not doing therapy, I know that it is therapeutic. And then like, I remember someone who'll come up and we're doing the seven little kids and the wolf. I'm like, okay, and were you the youngest? Yes, yeah, yeah, it comes, it just comes up. So just being able to trust that, that what comes up has something to say and following the thread
Mm.
and being very discreet about it, not that I know. I just wonder if perhaps
Mm.
and giving it space and time to come out, maybe looking at the drawing. Oh, I can see that the this is very big in this story in your drawing. If that symbol had a voice, what would the voice say? Like a
Mm.
speech comic.
Oh,
Trust the process.
that's really good advice. So thank you, Jennifer. We've had a wonderful chat. I've really enjoyed talking with you and going to look up all your programs because they look fantastic. How can people find you if they want to find out more about you and the work that you do?
Well, my webpage is story art with an E, storyarte.com. www.storyarte.com. And it's the same on social media. And my online school is on a platform called Teachable. And that's also Teachable Story Arte. If you put it in, everything's sort of Story Arte.
Yeah.
And I think I will start this new branch, which will be this sort of ecotherapy with storytelling. So that'll probably be up there as well very soon.
Oh, that sounds thrilling. I hope someone who's listening will sign up and do some of your courses because it sounds like you're doing wonderful work. Thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing. Really appreciate it as well.
If you've enjoyed the podcast and would like to support me to continue the work that I'm doing, please head to buymeacoffee.com/Alyssa Curtain and make a donation or sign up for a subscription. This is a passion project, and as such, it is voluntary. So your donations make it easier for me to continue this work. Thank you for your support. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.